A dangerous storm is set to impact the United States over the next few days, bringing the return of significant severe weather, including damaging winds, large hail, and tornadoes. Additionally, flooding will become a concern over the next few days across the Ohio Valley and the Great Plains, where rainfall is desperately needed. Lastly, the tropics are heating up very quickly as Hurricane Gabrielle is set to become a major hurricane near Bermuda today, and two tropical waves are right behind that in the Atlantic Ocean, one of which could actually impact the United States. So in today's forecast, we're going to break down exactly what you need to know about the weather that'll be impacting the United States over the next 7 days. And we'll begin with what's happening across the country today. And over the last 24 hours, we've actually had tons of storms, anywhere from the northern plains like Minnesota, all the way back into the Great Lakes and through the southern plains. We even had some really big hailstorms near Sanger, Texas yesterday, which is just outside of Dallas-Fort Worth. There were upwards of 2 to 2.5 inch diameter hailstones measured there. And further off to the north and east, we've just had a bunch of rain over the last 24 hours. And I do have some very good news. That rainfall is going to continue for the next several days across the Midwest and the Ohio Valley, where there is a growing drought right now. The bad news is that severe weather will accompany this, at least in some areas, not the entire Ohio Valley, but there could be some isolated severe weather on a few days. We'll talk more about that here in just a moment. Back along the West Coast, things are very quiet for right now. We got a lot of moisture currently streaming from the Pacific. Big storm system is about to form right in the Central Plains later today, which is going to help to organize our threat of severe weather over the next few days. Now, over the next few days, we are going to see severe weather make a big return, and we've not really seen a whole lot of severe weather over the last several weeks, and this storm is going to be the beginning of our second severe weather season. So let's talk more about it. This is what it looks like in our mid-level flow in our jet stream right now. We have a low pressure system that is currently ejecting over the Rocky Mountains, and as we go into late tonight and tomorrow, we are expecting our mid-level flow to intensify across areas like Oklahoma, Kansas, even Arkansas and Missouri, which is going to help to aid the potential for some significant severe weather, including the potential for a few tornadoes, which we're going to go more in detail about here in just a moment. On Wednesday and Thursday, that storm system is going to grow in size across the Midwest and the Great Lakes. This does not necessarily mean our risk of severe weather is going to grow, because I don't think it's going to really increase a whole lot from Tuesday to Wednesday, but I do think isolated to scattered severe weather will be a possibility across parts of the Ohio Valley and also back into the Dixie Alley on Wednesday. And then eventually, as we go into Thursday, the storm system will basically be stationary back over in the Great Lakes before eventually moving out as we go into Friday and Saturday. So really one of the biggest things that we're going to have to be watching for the next 4 to 5 days is that we're going to be watching for a ton of rainfall. And on top of that, this particular storm system is going to bring a multi-day severe weather event, including tornadoes. Now let's talk more about the severe weather potential for the next few days, beginning with today, which is Monday, and we have two slight risks of severe weather in place, one of which includes areas near Omaha, Nebraska, and then another one across Kansas, Oklahoma, and the Texas panhandles. There's also two large marginal threats of severe weather, one of which goes from Wisconsin back into North Texas, and another one across parts of the Ohio Valley. The biggest concern for today will be scattered damaging winds. Additionally, large hail is going to be a threat mainly in the slight risk areas, and there's also a chance for a couple of tornadoes. We're going to be monitoring a low-end tornado potential in Nebraska and Iowa, and another low chance of a couple of tornadoes, mainly during the late afternoon and evening hours. This one is a little bit more conditional, but we're going to be keeping an eye on it. I also would not rule out an isolated tornado back over here in the Ohio Valley later this afternoon. And then as we go into Tuesday, the threat of severe weather will shift further down to the south and east, where we do now have a slight risk of severe weather in place, including far northern North Texas, near Sherman, Texas, all the way back through Arkansas and southeastern Oklahoma. This does include Little Rock and as well as Rogers in Arkansas. There's also a marginal threat that goes from southern Kentucky all the way back into central Texas. I do think Tuesday has the potential to be the most significant day of severe weather out of the entire week, but things are going to have to basically go perfectly for this to potentially be an outbreak. We currently have an elevated threat of damaging winds, also large hail, especially in eastern Oklahoma and western Arkansas. There is also a 5% tornado risk outlined by the Storm Prediction Center, which includes areas like Fort Smith, Arkansas. There's also a 2% tornado risk, which goes all the way from Sherman, Texas into southern Missouri near Joplin. Now, personally, I do think Tuesday has a high ceiling when it comes to tornadoes, but it's going to come down to storm mode, and also whatever morning convection that we have needs to clear out fast enough so that afternoon convection can really intensify and produce the potential for tornadoes. So Tuesday is definitely a day that we need to be watching very closely. There is a chance of a live stream both Monday and Tuesday, so make sure you're subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified if and when we do go live. And the threat of severe weather will continue as we go into Wednesday. Wednesday from the Ohio Valley through the Gulf Coast, where isolated damaging winds and a couple of tornadoes will be a possibility. I think the greatest threat for severe weather on Wednesday will be mainly in this region. We might even see a slight risk of severe weather introduced in a future outlook, but if you're anywhere in Tennessee, Mississippi, Kentucky, or Louisiana, definitely stay weather aware on Wednesday for at least isolated severe storms. Now let's talk more about the timing of severe weather, beginning with today. We don't really have a whole lot of showers and storms out there right now, and we're not really expecting many throughout most of the afternoon, but by about 7 to 8 o'clock is when I'm expecting at least some storms to fire up across southern Nebraska and northwestern Kansas, with isolated hail and wind being the main concerns. Eventually by 9 to 10 o'clock, we'll be watching for a conditional risk of an isolated supercell firing up back over in northwest Oklahoma or southern Kansas. This should be mainly right around sunset. If nothing forms, then anything that happens will really be overnight tonight. So definitely make sure that you have multiple ways to receive alerts, because this is what it looks like by midnight. We got a lot of storms out there in central Kansas back into northern Oklahoma, and then eventually we really have some big storms going on by about 2 to 3 in the morning back over in southern Kansas and northern Oklahoma, with damaging winds being the biggest concern, but there will be a chance for a tornado or two out of those storms that do fire there. And then by around 7, 8 in the morning, storms will continue here across Oklahoma and Kansas. Localized flooding is also a concern. And then as we go into late Tuesday morning, we will continue to see showers and storms anywhere from northeast Oklahoma back into western Tennessee. But all this shower and storm activity will begin to lift to the north as we go into the early afternoon, which is going to help to destabilize our environment back over here in far eastern Oklahoma, even back over in North Texas and far western Arkansas, which, assuming all of this goes to plan, we are going to have a favorable environment for all hazards of severe weather. So by 4 to 5 o'clock, supercells will be firing off across far eastern Oklahoma just to the northwest of Fort Smith, with the biggest concern being hail and wind, but a couple of tornadoes will definitely be in play. By 6 to 7 o'clock, these storms will continue to track to the east across Arkansas. I honestly wouldn't even rule out an isolated strong tornado in this particular environment, assuming we have a discrete supercell out there, because we will have a localized area of very elevated wind shear during the mid to late afternoon and early evening. By about 7 to 8 o'clock, those storms will be approaching Little Rock, and then storms will begin to form right along our frontal boundary by about 9 to 10, with mainly a wind threat along this line of storms. And then as we go into the overnight hours, those showers and storms will continue, and we'll also be watching for some storms to fire off in far western Texas during the very late evening into the overnight hours, which will pose a wind and hail threat across central Texas and perhaps north Texas during the early morning on Wednesday. And then back over in the Midwest and across the Ohio Valley, we're expecting showers and thunderstorms to be pretty widespread this afternoon across much of Ohio and Kentucky. Again, damaging winds being the greatest concern, but I definitely will not rule out an isolated tornado or two in Ohio or far northern Kentucky. By about 3 to 4 o'clock, we're going to continue to watch for some storms to fire up across central Wisconsin and far northern Iowa. I also could see there being a very low chance of a landspout or even a tornado later this afternoon back over in Iowa or Minnesota, so do not be caught off guard there. Most of the storm activity, though, in the Midwest today will be fairly isolated to widely scattered. And then by 9 to 10 o'clock tonight, storms will continue to just kind of form and move further to the west across parts of Iowa. Might even see a few storms try to fire up near Omaha during the overnight hours. And if anything fires up during the overnight hours, we're mostly going to be concerned about hail and wind, but there will be a low-end chance for an isolated tornado out of any initial supercells that do fire up. And then most of the Midwest will dry off as we go into Tuesday morning, with a few more pop-up storms being a possibility Tuesday afternoon, but severe weather is not anticipated. And then back over in the Ohio Valley for late Tuesday and into early Wednesday, there will be a couple of storms out there across Tennessee and Kentucky on Tuesday, but severe weather not really anticipated. The remnants from Tuesday's severe weather event will move into parts of Kentucky, Tennessee, even back into Mississippi as we go into the overnight hours Tuesday into Wednesday morning, with isolated damaging winds and a low-end tornado risk existing. And then by Wednesday afternoon, we should start to see some storms fire off during the afternoon. This will be mainly between 12 and 8 o'clock. Any storms that fire will be mainly capable of isolated wind and hail. I do think there will be a localized tornado environment back over in parts of Alabama and Mississippi, perhaps as far north as Tennessee or even far southern Kentucky during the late afternoon and early evening. And then eventually, as we go into Thursday, this storm system will move off to the north and east, with just some scattered showers and storms along the east coast. Severe weather does not appear to be very likely, but there could be some isolated damaging winds and hail out of a few of the storms on Thursday. And another thing that this big storm is going to bring is a ton of rainfall. This is what it looks like between now and Friday of this week. We are anticipating a widespread 1 to 4 inches of rainfall from northern Oklahoma all the way through the Ohio Valley and the mid-Mississippi River River Valley and also across parts of the Northeast. There will be localized areas that'll pick up well over 5 inches of rain as well. I think one of those areas will be northwest Arkansas. We actually had over 8 inches of rainfall back over near Rogers yesterday. I definitely could see there being more rain on top of that over the next few days. Same thing goes back over northern Tennessee and southern Kentucky. We could have some spots that pick up around 4 to 7 inches of rainfall when this event is all said and done. And this is a broader overview of this big storm system. As we go into Wednesday and Thursday, we'll continue to see showers and storms from the Great Lakes back into the southern plains, including the Gulf Coast. By Thursday into Friday, it will eventually move offshore as high pressure will begin to build. And then by the weekend, we'll have to be keeping an eye on the tropics. We currently have an area of development that is back over in the far western Atlantic Ocean, just outside of the Bahamas and even near the Greater Antilles, which is kind of going in the direction of the United States. The GFS model is currently hinting that a tropical storm or hurricane could form by around Saturday or Sunday and perhaps even move towards the United States. I do want to point out, though, that models have been all over the place with this. It could be much further to the east than this, and it might not even develop into anything. However, we definitely need to be keeping a close eye here along the East Coast over the next few days in case something does form, because again, the Atlantic Ocean is still very favorable for hurricanes to form, especially if we have very little wind shear out there, which in this case, there will probably not be a whole lot of wind shear after this thing actually develops, assuming that it does form. And then eventually into next week, things become more uncertain, but I'm not currently seeing any sort of big storm systems anywhere in the United States that bring more severe weather by the tail end of September into the very first few days of October. And this is a broad overview of the tropics right now. We currently have 2 areas of development, one of which is in orange. That has a medium chance of developing over the next few days. This one will basically be right behind Gabrielle, more than likely impacting areas near Bermuda, but again, there is only about a 50-50 chance it actually forms. And then this right here is the area of development that I was just talking about. This may develop over the next few days, and if it is able to form, we could have some problems on our hands along the east coast of the United States. So make sure you are subscribed to the channel and click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates, because if this does end up looking like it's going to form, we will have daily video updates talking all about it. Additionally, we may even have live coverage if this is to make landfall in the United States as we go into the weekend or early next week. This is also Hurricane Gabrielle, which is actually set to become a major hurricane today, just off the coast of Bermuda. This is currently tracking to the north and will eventually turn out to sea, but nonetheless, this is set to become our second major hurricane of the season. And keep in mind, this is only the second hurricane that we've had so far in the Atlantic hurricane season. Let's hope it stays that way, but I am not seeing many signs that we are going to see hurricane season slow down anytime soon. It looks like things are really picking up right now in the Atlantic Ocean. Might even have something trying to form in the Gulf as we go into early October as well. And this is a closer view of Hurricane Gabrielle, which is just to the southeast of Bermuda. This right here is Bermuda, so we're starting to see some of those outer bands reach. Luckily, the worst of the impacts will be offshore, not impacting Bermuda very much, but there will be some rip currents out there for sure over the next several days, and then some storm surge is going to be a possibility. And this is the official forecast from the National Hurricane Center on Hurricane Gabrielle. It is expected to become a major hurricane tonight on the same latitude as Bermuda, and then as we go into Tuesday, it will be moving away from Bermuda, eventually going towards the Azores Islands, and then by about Thursday into Friday, that's when it will be impacting that region as a tropical storm. And as always, thank you all so much for watching today's forecast. If you are new to the channel, make sure to subscribe down below. Our next video will likely be tomorrow. If not, it'll be on Wednesday, so click the bell icon so you're notified with the latest updates. Also, chances of live streams do exist today, tomorrow, and Wednesday, so stay tuned to the channel, and we'll see you guys all again in the next video or live stream.